Hi y'all, today I'm going to show you how to make my gluten-free sweet cherry pie. It is absolutely irresistible, you guys. It starts with my homemade gluten-free pie crust, which is, it's delicious, it's flaky, and it's so easy to make and work with, but that filling, OMG. When my husband and I first tasted the filling by itself, we said we could just eat it with a spoon or on vanilla ice cream, and you certainly could do that, but you really should try to make the pie too, because this might be the best sweet cherry pie you have ever had. According to my husband, it definitely is the best he's ever had. And y'all, he doesn't need to eat gluten-free. So let's get into it and I'll show you just how easy it is to make. The first thing we need to do is pit our cherries, and to do that I'm using a cherry pitter. You can also do it with a straw. I think there's plenty of things on Google about that, but I wanted to do it all as quickly as possible. But this one I got on Amazon, and I'll leave a link for that below. It was like $13, so really cheap. But I will say you need to check each cherry after you pit them, because sometimes the pits will stay in there if they're not quite lined up right. So once we've got our cherries pitted, we go ahead and put them in a saucepan over medium heat, and I'm adding sugar, a little bit of cinnamon, and lemon juice, just like a pinch of cinnamon. It's not going to give it a cinnamony flavor. So we'll swirl this around and just kind of get it moving, because we want that sugar to start melting and then the juice is starting to release from the cherries. And this will take anywhere from like 10 to 15 minutes or so. So just be mindful. You don't have to stand there and constantly stir, but I would come back to it every few minutes and just stir it around until everything starts breaking down. So I'm going to speed this up for the sake of the video, of course, and you'll get to see how it transforms into this nice glossy concoction. And once it starts boiling like that, we can go ahead and make our cornstarch slurry. And this is like something that I just invented myself, because I had this little bottle of amaretto di Serrano, and I wanted to use it for something, and I know that cherries and amaretto or cherries and almond go together very well. So I'm using cornstarch and that entire little airline bottle of amaretto, and let me tell you, it was the best decision I made for this pie. So now that the mixture is boiling, just add in your cornstarch slurry and swirl it around, and it's going to transform before your eyes into this amazingly thick, gooey, rich, it's just heaven, you guys. I am telling you, if you like amaretto, you have to do it with the amaretto. Of course, you can leave the amaretto out and just use water. So see how this is looking so good, you guys. And I'm telling you, you could just eat this by itself or on some vanilla ice cream. But check that out. You see that pit right there? There were two of them actually, and I managed to get them out. Just pick them out. They'll start coming out if you didn't check your cherries. I didn't, and that's why I'm telling you to check your cherries at the beginning, because as my husband especially was eating a slice of this pie, he had like 4 pits in one slice of pie. Somehow I had none, but he had 4 pits. So please, please, please check your cherries before you decide if they are actually pitted. Oh, and by the way, when you add the cornstarch, you want to make sure you boil that for at least 30 seconds, preferably a minute, because that's really how long it takes for cornstarch to activate and do its thing, the thickening part. I'm pouring this directly into another bowl where it will cool down in the fridge. I'm going to cover it with plastic wrap and let it chill for 2 to 3 hours actually, until it is nice and cool. And it will be even thicker when it comes out. So now we can start on the pie crust. If you've never made my pie crust, I'll leave a link for the full video below, but this is an old video that I'm just speeding up here. I just have my all-purpose flour blend in my food processor along with some kosher salt, and I'm adding plenty of cold cubed butter. And I'm just going to pulse that a few times just to break up the butter into smaller chunks, but still pretty large chunks. Now I'll add in 1 tablespoon of vinegar, white vinegar, 1 whole egg that's been beaten well, and we will pulse those also to combine, and then we're going to pulse in our ice cold water minus the ice. And we'll do this until the mixture comes together into one ball, basically riding the top of the blade. It should stick together like this and actually be slightly on the wet side. So we divide this into 2, put it in the fridge for at least a half an hour, and then we can roll it out. So now we can roll out the dough now that it's been properly chilled. If your dough has been in there longer than 30 minutes, like overnight or whatever, go ahead and take it out and leave it on the counter for a good 15 to 20 minutes before you start rolling it out, or it will be hard to roll out because all that butter will have solidified way too much and you will have a hard time rolling it out. Otherwise, this dough is super, super easy to work with. Probably the easiest pie dough that I've ever worked with, honestly, before gluten-free or after. So it's a very easy dough. It's very forgiving. You just want to keep it moving, you know, like I'm doing here, and add flour when necessary to avoid sticking. So I keep it moving and then roll it out a little bit, never going over the edge because I feel like that kind of compresses the edge too much. So you just roll it to the edge and never further. Roll it a couple times, swirl it around in that flour, make sure it's not sticking, and get it to the size you want it to be at. Okay, once I have it as large as I think I need it, I'm going to take my pie dish and just double check to make sure there's plenty of overhang, and there is. This is a 9-inch pie dish. You can use a smaller or a larger, but I would suggest if you use a larger for sure, I would double the filling because it isn't like an overly filled pie. My favorite method for transferring it is just to simply roll it up on my rolling pin and transfer it like that. And it, like I said, it's so forgiving to be able to do this. Past pie crust, I would not have been able to do this without it falling apart. So just unroll it onto your pie dish. And what I like to do is go around with my fingers and actually my knuckles and kind of press it into the corners of the pie dish. And that just ensures that it stays put and it doesn't contract too much when it's baking. But this is a filled pie that's going to bake anyway with the filling in it and not separately as like a blind baked pie crust. So they're a little more forgiving for the shrinkage in that case. And I like to take just some simple kitchen shears and cut the excess off. You want to leave a little bit of a lip, about like a ½ an inch or so that you can tuck it either under or over that top crust once you get that top crust on. And all of that can be re-rolled and used as a third pie crust. So actually my recipe, if you make your pies on the smaller side like this, you can actually get 3 pie crusts from one recipe. And I do it all the time with the scraps. Okay, now we can add the filling in. Look at how thick and rich and wonderful this filling looks. Like I said, you could just eat it with a spoon and you would be completely satisfied, or over vanilla ice cream. But we want to save it for the pie filling, so I'm getting all of that in there. I already have my top crust rolled out, so I'm just using a cake decorating tip, actually, a large one, and I am cutting holes into the pie crust. I wanted this like kind of abstract, unusual top crust instead of just the regular old top crust or even a lattice top crust. But if you want a lattice top crust or a regular one, there are plenty of videos on my site that has both of those. This was just something for fun that I wanted to do just to make it different. And I'm just punching out these holes, and of course I will just re-roll those holes into another crust. So now I'm going to switch it to the other side, which is a small opening, just a small round opening, and do smaller ones. And like I said, this is just an abstract kind of fun way to do it. You don't have to do it this way. You can just roll out your crust and roll it up on your rolling pin and just put it on your pie and cut a few slits in it and you will be done. It is definitely much easier to transfer this pie crust when you have more room. Unless you are trying to get it on video, you should have no problem transferring it just by putting your hands underneath it. But if you have problems, just roll it up on your rolling pin just like we did the other one. And if it tears a little bit, just piece it back together just like this. It's definitely more difficult to try to get something on film when you have a limited amount of space to work with. And definitely don't throw away the rest of that pie crust because you can use it for another pie, or just do like my mom used to do. She used to take pie crust scraps and just sprinkle them with cinnamon and sugar and put them on a baking sheet in the oven while the pie is baking for the first, like, I don't know, 15 minutes or so. And they were like really great little snacks for us before we could dive into that pie that she was making. And it was usually an apple pie. That is her specialty, the apple pie, and I make a version of it on my own website and on my YouTube channel, so you can check that one out too. Now I'm just taking the bottom crust and folding it up and over the top crust. You can do it either way. You can do the top crust folded underneath the bottom crust, or this way, which is in reverse. So now I'm just going to crimp the edges. You don't even have to do this. You could take a fork and just make it real simple. You could go a little bit further and take those cutout circles and basically glue them with some egg wash onto the edges of the pie. Any way you want to do it. And then we'll just take an egg wash and brush it all over the top and on the edges of the pie crust. And I like to sprinkle mine with demerara sugar. You can also use like sparkling sugar, regular sugar, coarse sugar, any kind of sugar you want, or no sugar at all too. Put the pie on a baking sheet to catch any drippings and bake it at 400 degrees Fahrenheit for 15 minutes. Turn the heat down to 350 and continue baking it for another 45 to 50 minutes or until the juices are bubbling. That's all there is to it, you guys. It is so easy to make this pie. And let me tell you, I've been trying to make cherry pies every cherry season for a couple years now, and they were just never quite right. They were either too soupy or just lacked a lot of flavor. And cherries don't have a huge flavor on their own. I love eating them just out of hand, but they don't have a bold flavor. And adding that amaretto just really makes it. And I really love the thickness of the filling in this pie. Enjoy!